Fallout's weapon designs have always been pretty unique, some consisting of some minor tweaks to existing weapons like the R91 or the service rifle, while other weapons have a completely unique style like the 6.520 or the 12.7mm pistol or SMG. Today, we're checking out a weapon mod that really embodies that Fallout style of weaponry that's just so unique. There's very clearly some small inspirations taken here and there from real-life weapon platforms, but for the most part, the overall product is something so different and so unique that it makes for a completely fun new experience for Fallout 4. And the weapon we're checking out today is also one of my favorite mods so far this year. I know we're not that far into the year, but definitely this one has shined above the rest for me. We're checking out the Cycling Rifle Rat Runner's Arsenal by Spadey. This is going to add the new cycling rifle, a new revolver, bolt-action, mag-fed rifle. Now, if that doesn't sound Fallout to you, then I don't know what does. We already have things like the 6.520, a mag-fed revolver. This is going to build upon that with a mag-fed revolver that is also a bolt-action rifle. It's pretty dang weird. Now, technically speaking, this kind of an action could work. It would be weird, it'd be extremely over-engineered, and it would be completely unnecessary. But it could work. And that's kind of what makes it fun. It's a completely over-the-top weapon with a bunch of mechanisms that are absolutely unnecessary, but it makes it so unique and looks so cool, and I think it works perfectly for a hero character. However, it has a lot more going for it than just the standard old weapon. This thing is also going to come with 3 uniques, level-less integration, a ton of really cool attachments, and custom animation support. And when I say support, that means that you can use vanilla animations or custom animations, and this weapon will allow you to use either depending on which optional files you choose. Now, this weapon is going to make use of the vanilla bolt-action animations from the hunting rifle, which means it will be left-handed by default. But if you are using a right-handed animation, this will have an optional file which supports that by flipping the mesh over to the right side. And what that means with this particular integration is that you can use any right-handed animation that you like. You're not going to be locked to just one, so I really like that. Like I said earlier, this thing does have a leveled list integration, which is always huge for me. I love being able to find weapons out in the world. If you want to get your hands on this one, it starts spawning out in the world on level 12, and you'll find it on enemies, at vendors, etc. This rifle boasts 48 new attachments plus 3 additional unique attachments that are specifically for the unique weapons that cannot be applied to the standard variants, at least not in traditional forms. And it's also going to come with skin support for the Creation Club because it does use vanilla textures, so that's pretty cool. I don't have too many Creation Club skins, so I can't really show that off a lot. But I believe that when we get to the attachment section, I will be able to show off at least one, though it's not going to shine as much as some other skins might. As if this mod wasn't great enough, it also comes with an ESL marked ESP, so it will not take up a slot in your load order. It'll basically be a free mod. And since it is going to use remapped vanilla textures, it's going to come in at only 2.3 megabytes for the full mod, which is kind of crazy. You're going to get a fantastic weapon with awesome uniques, wonderful integration, and overall just a cool looking design for nearly no space at all, and it's not even going to take up a slot in your ESP list, so that is pretty amazing. Now, some of you out there may be a little apprehensive of the idea that it uses vanilla textures, but you have to understand these are remapped vanilla textures. The idea is that Spadey is basically taking them as sort of a sticker and applying them to new things in ways that are actually not bad whatsoever. Typically, using vanilla textures can be a little sketchy, but the way that Spadey is doing it is truly a wonderful way to go about it. Having these textures just rewrapped and reconfigured completely allows you to use them in ways they've never been used before, and it also makes it so that they're not going to be stretched or warped or anything like that, because he is in complete control of where these textures end up on the model. Some people will remesh, some people will reuse textures in a way that will absolutely ruin a model, but the way that it's being used here, and it's used the same way that Mikolov uses textures, is absolutely fantastic. So if you're a fan of Mikolov's weapons, you'll understand kind of what's going on here with these vanilla textures. It also means that if you use any retextures, that those work as well. Now, we've got a lot to talk about, the animations as well as the cool new uniques and stats and all that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and hop in game and start checking out the finer details of this weapon, which there are a lot of. Now, before we get straight into the stats, there is actually one important thing you're probably seeing already that I did forget to talk about, and that is going to be the ammo type for this weapon. Some of the uniques actually do use vanilla ammo types, but the main rifle itself is going to require munitions because it does use 280. Now, I consider myself to know a good bit about firearms, but I couldn't tell you what 280 is used for in real life. But this is a funky gun, so maybe that funky ammo type is appropriate for this. Not sure entirely. There is sadly not a non-munitions version. It doesn't really affect me too bad because I do use munitions, but having a one-of-a-kind rifle that is, as far as I know, the only weapon so far that uses 280, is kind of out there, but I do understand, as I've done similar things with my mods, maybe at some point Spady will make more weapons that use 280, which makes it a totally viable caliber in your game. So you're just going to have to be patient and see if he releases anything else that makes use of that ammo type, which will make this weapon make a little bit more sense in your sandbox. Now then, here we get a good look at the basic version of the weapon, which is pretty interesting. It almost looks more like a pistol, but it's always going to use rifle animations, even with this shorter barrel and shorter stock. This thing has a base damage of about 50. Keep in mind I do have perks on, which are going to change that quite a bit. Has a fire rate of 4, because it is bolt action, of course. You can see here that I do have the right-handed animation, by the way. So that's how this looks with that sort of setup, and it looks pretty cool to me. It has a range of 197, an accuracy of 72, a weight of 9.8 pounds, and a value of 59 caps. Now, typically, I'll usually scoff a bit whenever there's a pretty heavy weight with a pretty small weapon, but considering this thing is wood and solid steel, and it has a super overcomplicated mechanism with a moving bolt, as well as a revolver cylinder and a magazine, I think that weight might actually check out to be pretty accurate. This thing seems like it would be a big hunk of metal to hold. You'd probably do more damage if you just bash somebody's skull in with it. Really quick, though, I do also want to show off some of the different variations you can come up with. This is one of my favorite rifle variations with all wood furniture. I really like this scope design, cool suppressor. All of this looks pretty sick. Takes some really fun ideas and makes an all-new rifle that looks completely unique from anything else in the vanilla game. So that is definitely worth commending. It doesn't stop there, though. There's also 3 uniques that we need to talk about. They're going to have their own custom attachments and unique effects that make them very different from the vanilla or standard versions of this weapon. The Rattler itself is going to be pretty crazy, with a special belt-feeding mechanism that allows you to turn this into a semi-automatic rifle from a bolt rifle, and is going to be converted to shoot 5.56. So it's basically going to turn into sort of a combat rifle of sorts. You're not going to need to bolt every time. It's going to be semi-automatic. It has a huge drum mag attached. And it's going to use 5.56 instead of that 280. So that's pretty interesting. It also comes with an OKP sight, a fun, totally not stolen design from Mikolov on the stock here, and then that big drum mag. This thing's pretty cool, pretty interesting. This is probably one of the more powerful options in this mod, and as such, if you want to get your hands on it, it's found over at Libertalia, so you have to fight through quite a bit of raiders to get your hands on this really fun unique. Now, for my second favorite unique, we have the Blowtorch, which is going to, of course, throw out some Dragon's Breath, set people on fire, and it's going to rechamber it to 20 gauge, making this into a shotgun revolver bolt action, lever action, mag-fed rifle. Notice I threw in lever action, as this is going to be the only one that has a lever action mechanism added into the mix, because I think, honestly, at this point, Spady is just trying to troll nitpicky, gun-loving users who are going to complain about how this weapon would never be functional. But it looks cool, and honestly, it does look really, really cool. I do kind of wish that it would change the animation set to use lever action, but I know that isn't really feasible considering this weapon's design, but man, this thing just looks really, really fun. If you want to get your hands on this one, it's going to be found, of course, over at Saugus Ironworks, the same place that everyone puts their incendiary uniques. Now, a really, really fun unique, this is my favorite of the batch, which comes with its own super cool attachment set, is the Perpetual Machine. This actually keeps the 280 round, but it has the chance to ricochet up to twice, hitting other targets after your first target, which makes this a really cool sniper rifle, capable of taking out a bunch of enemies at once. I think that's such a cool, unique idea, and such a cool, unique design. This thing looks super cool, and in my opinion, super Fallout. If you'd like to get your hands on this guy, you're going to need to head over to Virgil's Cave and pick it up from over there. A pretty advanced ballistic weapon, so I guess that makes a good bit of sense, plus you're going to have to venture through the glowing sea to get your hands on it. Now for animations, of course, like I said, this does use the vanilla hunting rifle animations, though I have the patch for right-handed. I believe that I'm using Hitman's right-handed animations, so you can go ahead and see what those look like on here. But also you can get a look at the whole mechanism, and I can point out some things that probably should be obvious, but just for anybody who isn't aware, might make or break this mod for them. So for starters, let's just go ahead and check out the reload. So the pretty obvious thing, if you've been paying attention, is that the cylinder does not move on this guy. An additional thing is that there actually are no visible shells on the back of the cylinder. Now, that's not necessarily a problem for me. I would imagine that a design like this, similar to say a 6.520, which is also a fictional design, would probably have the shells be internal. It's just interesting that you can kind of see the divots of them, so that one is a little bit curious to me, but maybe those are actually holes for the bolt. Trying to explain how this weapon works, I'm realizing, is kind of a fool's errand, because it's definitely not supposed to function correctly. It's supposed to be a fun fictional design, but even still, I think that you could sort of argue as to how this thing actually functions. That being said, with limitations of animation, since these are not custom, you're not going to have a moving cylinder. That might be a killer for somebody, but for me, it's not that big of a deal. When you're actually playing the game and shooting people, you probably won't even notice. Now then, let's talk attachments, because we've got a good bit of attachments here to talk about. For receivers, we have standard up through advanced. Nothing too crazy there, mostly the stuff you would expect from the receiver section. But for barrels, we have a short barrel, a short light barrel, which adds a really cool cut metal grip as opposed to the wood, and then a short ported barrel, which has a different wood grip. We also have long versions of each of these. My favorite of these, honestly, is probably the long light barrel. I think that the design on that is super cool and unique. It looks really, really neat. I quite like that a lot. For grips, we have the standard grip down here at the bottom, a sharpshooter's grip, and a comfort grip. So you definitely could make this a short little pistol style weapon if you wanted, but it is of course going to have the rifle style animations regardless. Then we have the standard stock, which is going to add that nice little makeshift stock, the marksman stock for full wood, and the recoil compensating stock to sort of match this front barrel. Obviously these are intended to be used together, but I think you could mix and match these for some really fun ideas. Like if you wanted to add a nice balance to the weight and add a wood stock on the back, you can make the front end lighter, or whatever you want. It really is up to you how you want to design this thing, but definitely I think this is a fun look for a light sort of weapon. For magazine, we have standard, medium, and large, and then quick eject versions of each of those as to be expected. For sights, we have the standard iron sights, as well as glow versions of those sights. We have a reflex sight, which is going to be that OKP style, a short scope, a short night vision scope, and a short recon scope, as well as a medium scope, medium night vision scope, and medium recon scope, and a long scope, long night vision scope, and a long recon scope, all of which are going to come with their own unique models. So far, we now have a pretty sci-fi looking version of this weapon that we haven't seen anything like yet. Everything I've shown off so far is pretty interesting, but this looks something straight out of Starfield. It looks really, really cool. For muzzles, we have the option for no muzzle, a bayonet, which is a pretty interesting style here, sort of a tri-point bayonet, a compensator, a muzzle brake, and a suppressor. I really like this suppressor design quite a lot. And then finally, we do have a section for materials. If you are using Creation Club skins, which I, for the most part, am not, at some point I got the Enclave paint. I don't know when that happened, but you can barely even tell that it's doing much. As you can see, there is a little bit there on the scope, but because of the attachments I have here, it's not really changing that much. If I throw it on, though, we can probably get some more out of some different options. If we go and change out the stock, yeah, for a marksman stock here, as well as the barrel for the ported barrel, you can actually see a bit more going on. Now, this is going to work with other skins, so it's something you might want to mix and match, try out different skins if you're a user of those Creation Club skins, and you'll get to see some different fun paint jobs for this thing. Having built-in support for that is pretty nice, so for those of you who use it, you do have that as an added bonus. For me, it doesn't make much of a difference, but I do definitely appreciate that it's there as an option. So yeah, guys, that is the cycling rifle. If you want to check it out for yourself, it will be linked down in the description below. I highly recommend you do if you're looking for a fun, new, wacky, lore-friendly weapon. It's very, very cool. Spady does awesome stuff, and their craft is just getting better. I'm loving to see the really fun integrations into the game, as well as these really cool and awesome models and different unique ideas that are just different from stuff we have already on the Nexus. So definitely consider checking this one out, support Spady. And while you're down there, if you enjoyed the video, consider dropping it a like. It really helps out the channel, and it's a great way to show your support of what kind of weapons or what kind of mods you'd like to see covered. Additionally, if you like my work and you'd like to support it directly, whether it's the videos I make here on YouTube or the mods I make on the Nexus, you can do so by using my link down in the description and check me out on Patreon. That, of course, is completely optional, not something you should feel like you need to do, but it's there if you'd like to donate. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace!